Some people walk into your life through the front door. She walked into mine and sat on my bed like she'd been waiting there forever. I just didn't know yet that she was about to become my home. David pushed open the door to his apartment, his shoulders aching from another exhausting shift at the hospital. 16 hours of back-to-back patients, missed lunch breaks, and endless paperwork had drained every ounce of energy from his body. All he could think about was collapsing into bed and sleeping for the next 12 hours straight. He kicked off his shoes in the hallway, tossed his keys onto the kitchen counter, and headed straight for his bedroom. The apartment was dark and quiet. His roommate Jake was probably already asleep, which was fine by him. David wasn't in the mood for conversation anyway. But when he flipped on the light in his bedroom, he froze in the doorway. There was a woman sitting on his bed, cross-legged, phone in hand, looking completely relaxed like she'd been there for hours. She glanced up at him with calm brown eyes and gave him a small smile. "Hey," she said casually, as if this was the most normal situation in the world. David blinked, then blinked again. His tired brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Who are you?" "Oh, right. I'm Maya." She set her phone down on the bedspread. "Jake's sister." "He didn't tell you I was coming?" "Jake's sister?" David rubbed his face, trying to wake himself up enough to handle this bizarre situation. No, he definitely didn't mention that. Maya winced slightly. "Yeah, that sounds like him. Look, I'm really sorry about this. Jake said it would be fine if I crashed here for a few days while I figured out my living situation. He gave me his key and told me to make myself at home." David looked around his room. In the corner near his closet, there was a neat stack of bags and a suitcase. Maya had clearly been here for a while, but nothing of his seemed disturbed. His desk was exactly as he'd left it. His books were untouched, even his jacket was still draped over his chair where he'd left it that morning. "And you chose my bed to make yourself at home?" The words came out more tired than angry. "Oh no, God, no." Maya stood up quickly, grabbing her phone. "I was just sitting here because there's an outlet right here and my charger cord is really short. I haven't been sleeping in here or anything. I've been on the couch. I was just waiting for my phone to charge so I could order some dinner." She gestured apologetically toward the wall outlet near his nightstand. Sure enough, her phone charger was plugged in there. David sighed deeply. This was not how he'd imagined his night going. "Does Jake know you're here right now? Like in my room?" "Honestly, probably not. He got home like an hour ago and went straight to his room. Said something about an early morning tomorrow." Maya gathered her charger and phone. "Look, I'm really sorry. This is super awkward. Jake promised he'd talk to you about it, but clearly that conversation never happened." David walked down the hall and knocked on Jake's door. No answer. He knocked louder. Still nothing. He tried the handle. It was locked. "Jake!" he called out, knocking again. "Jake, we need to talk." From inside, Jake's muffled voice groaned. "Dude, I'm sleeping. Whatever it is can wait until morning. Your sister is here. In our apartment." "You didn't think to mention that?" There was a long pause. "Oh yeah, sorry man. Totally slipped my mind. It's just for a couple days. She's cool, I promise. We'll talk tomorrow, yeah?" David stared at the closed door in disbelief. He thought about arguing, about demanding Jake come out and explain himself properly, but exhaustion won. He was too tired for this. When he walked back to his room, Maya was standing in the hallway holding her things, looking genuinely apologetic. "I really am sorry about this mess. Jake's always been terrible at communication. If you want me to leave, I can find a hotel or something." David studied her for a moment. She looked tired too, he noticed. There were shadows under her eyes and her clothes looked like they'd been worn all day. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, she seemed genuine in her apology. "No, it's fine," he heard himself say. "You can stay on the couch like Jake said, just maybe don't hang out on my bed anymore." Maya's face brightened with relief. "Absolutely. I promise I'll stay out of your way. You won't even know I'm here." But as David finally crawled into bed 20 minutes later, he found that promise hard to believe. Because even though Maya was now settled on the couch in the living room, he couldn't stop thinking about how she'd looked sitting on his bed. There was something about the way she'd been so calm, so completely at ease in an otherwise awkward situation. Most people would have been embarrassed or defensive, but she'd handled it with a grace that surprised him. He rolled over, punching his pillow into a more comfortable shape. It was just a few days, he told himself. She'd find a place, move out, and life would go back to normal. He'd probably barely see her anyway with his crazy work schedule. Still, As he drifted off to sleep, his last thought was of her sitting there in the lamplight, looking up at him with those calm eyes, as if she'd been waiting for him to come home. The next morning, David woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Jake never made coffee in the morning. He was more of a grab an energy drink on the way out kind of guy. But when David shuffled into the kitchen, still half asleep, he found Maya standing by the coffee maker, pouring dark liquid into 2 mugs. "Morning," she said cheerfully. "I made coffee. Hope that's okay. I figured after last night's awkwardness I owed you at least that much." She handed him one of the mugs, a simple black cup with no design. His favorite mug, actually. The one he used every morning. How did she know? "Lucky guess," Maya said, as if reading his mind. "It was the cleanest mug in the cabinet, so I figured it was someone's regular one. And since Jake drinks everything out of disposable cups like a college kid, I assumed it was yours." David took a sip. It was perfect. Not too strong, not too weak, exactly how he liked it. "Thanks," he mumbled. "No problem." Maya leaned against the counter, holding her own mug. "So I know last night was weird, but I want you to know I really appreciate you letting me stay. I promise I'll be out of your hair soon. I've got a few apartment viewings lined up this week." "What happened?" David asked before he could stop himself. "I mean, you don't have to tell me. But Jake mentioned you needed a place to crash for a few days." Maya's smile faded slightly. "Long story. The short version is I was living with someone and that situation became unhealthy. So I left. Kind of suddenly. I'm a freelance photographer, so at least I can work from anywhere. But finding an affordable place in this city on short notice isn't easy." There was something in the way she said unhealthy that made David not want to push further. He recognized that tone from his work at the hospital. It was the same careful language people used when they didn't want to say the full truth out loud. "Well, take your time," he said. "The couch is yours for as long as you need it." Maya looked surprised, then grateful. "Really, thank you. That means a lot." They stood there for a moment, sipping coffee in comfortable silence as morning light filtered through the kitchen window. And for the first time since he'd moved into this apartment 2 years ago, David felt like the space was actually lived in, actually felt like home. He had no idea then how much everything was about to change. The first week of Maya living on the couch passed in a blur of unexpected small moments. David would come home from his shifts at the hospital to find the apartment subtly transformed. Nothing dramatic, just little changes that made the place feel warmer somehow. Fresh flowers appeared on the kitchen table on Wednesday. Just a simple bouquet of daisies in a water glass, but they brightened the whole room. On Thursday, he noticed the living room had been reorganized. The furniture was in the same place, but everything felt more open, more breathable. On Friday, he walked into the bathroom to find his favorite coffee mug, which he'd forgotten to wash that morning, sitting clean and dry on the counter. "You don't have to do all this," David told Maya on Saturday morning when he found her wiping down the kitchen counters. She looked up, surprised. "Do what?" "Clean, organize the flowers. You're a guest here, not our housekeeper." Maya laughed, a warm sound that made David smile despite himself. "I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. Besides, it keeps me busy between photo jobs. And honestly, taking care of a space helps me feel less like I'm floating through life right now." That answer made sense to David in a way he hadn't expected. He understood that need to feel grounded, to have some kind of routine when everything else felt uncertain. They started running into each other more often after that. Not on purpose, just the natural rhythm of 2 people sharing a small space. Maya was an early riser, usually up by 6 to catch the morning light for her photography work. David's schedule was all over the place depending on his shifts. But they often crossed paths in the kitchen. Those kitchen conversations became the highlight of David's days, though he wouldn't have admitted it out loud. "Where are you from originally?" he asked one morning while they both waited for the coffee to brew. "Small town in Colorado," Maya said. "One of those places where everyone knows everyone and nothing ever changes. I loved it as a kid, but I needed more. More people, more opportunities, more life, you know?" David nodded. "I'm from a small town too. Minnesota. Left as soon as I could. Do you ever miss it?" He thought about that. "Sometimes. Mostly I miss how simple things were. But I don't miss feeling stuck." "Exactly," Maya said, her eyes lighting up. "That's exactly it. That stuck feeling. Jake was around less and less. He'd met someone new. a girl named Lisa who lived across town, and he spent most of his free time at her place. This meant David and Maya had the apartment to themselves more often than not. It should have felt awkward, but it didn't. Instead, it felt natural, easy. One evening, David came home around 8 after a particularly rough day at work. They'd lost a patient, an older man who'd been in the ICU for weeks. David knew it was coming, they all did, but it never got easier. He walked into the apartment feeling hollowed out and exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Maya was in the kitchen cooking something that smelled amazing. She took one look at his face and didn't ask any questions. She just said, "Sit. Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. David sat at the kitchen table and watched her move around the kitchen. She was making pasta, something simple but comforting. She hummed while she cooked, an old jazz tune he almost recognized but couldn't quite place. When she set the plate in front of him, she sat down with her own, and they ate in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of quiet that exists between people who understand that sometimes words aren't necessary. After dinner, David helped her wash dishes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I needed that." "Bad day?" Maya asked gently. "Yeah, lost someone today." She nodded, drying a plate slowly. "My mom was a nurse. She used to say the day it stops hurting is the day you need to find a different job." "Your mom sounds wise." She was. Maya's voice went soft. "She passed away 2 years ago, cancer." "I'm sorry." "Me too." She set the plate down and turned to look at him. "But you know what she also used to say? That the people who do the hard jobs, the ones who show up even when it breaks their heart a little bit each time, those are the people who keep the world turning. So thank you for showing up today." David felt something crack open in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear something like that until she said it. They moved to the living room after dishes, and somehow ended up talking until midnight. Maya told him about her photography, how she'd started taking pictures as a teenager to escape the monotony of small-town life. She showed him her portfolio on her laptop, and David was genuinely impressed. Her work had this quality of capturing ordinary moments and revealing the extraordinary within them. "This one," David said, pointing to a photo of an old man sitting on a park bench feeding pigeons. "There's something about his expression, right? Everyone else was walking past him like he was invisible, but I saw him sitting there and he looked so content. Like he'd figured out some secret to happiness that the rest of us are still searching for." Maya smiled at the photo fondly. "I sat and talked with him for an hour after I took that. His name was George. He was 93 years old and still went to that park every single day." "Was?" David caught the past tense. "I went back a few months later and he wasn't there. Asked around and found out he'd passed away the week before. But I'm glad I got to capture that moment, you know? Glad I took the time to see him." That conversation shifted something between them. It was like they'd moved past the surface-level small talk and into something more real, more honest. 2 weeks turned into 3 weeks. Maya had been to several apartment viewings, but nothing had worked out. Either the places were too expensive, too far from downtown where her clients were, or just not quite right. She seemed frustrated by it, but David secretly didn't mind that she was still around. The apartment felt different with her there. Better. One evening, David came home to find her in his room again. This time she was standing by his window with her camera, capturing something outside. He should have been annoyed, should have reminded her about boundaries. But instead he just watched her work. She was completely absorbed in what she was doing, adjusting her camera settings, waiting for just the right moment, then clicking the shutter. There was something beautiful about watching someone do something they truly loved. "Sorry," Maya said when she finally noticed him standing there. "Your window has the best light in the whole apartment. The way the sunset hits the buildings across the street is just—" She trailed off, showing him the camera screen. The photo was stunning. It was his view, the same cityscape he looked at every day without really seeing, but transformed into something magical. The golden light of sunset made the ordinary buildings look like they were glowing from within. "That's beautiful," David said honestly. "It's all about perspective," Maya replied. "Same view, different eyes. Want to see something cool?" She pulled up another photo, this one taken from the same window but at dawn. The light was completely different, softer and more ethereal. Then another at midday, harsh and bright and almost abstract. Then one at night, all shadows and city lights. 4 times of day, same window, 4 completely different worlds, Maya said. That's what I love about photography. It teaches you to really look at things, not just glance at them. David found himself standing very close to her, looking at the camera screen. He could smell her shampoo, something floral and light. He could hear the soft sound of her breathing. And he realized with sudden clarity that having her here, in his space, in his room, didn't feel like an intrusion at all anymore. It felt right, like maybe she did belong there, sitting on his bed, standing by his window, existing in his life. But he pushed that thought away as quickly as it came. She was Jake's sister. She was going through something difficult. She was temporary. Getting attached would be stupid. Even as he thought it, though, he knew it was already too late. By the 4th week, David had stopped counting the days. Maya's presence in the apartment had become so natural that he almost couldn't remember what it was like before she arrived. Jake was barely around anymore, practically living at Lisa's place. Most nights it was just David and Maya. They'd developed their own rhythm. Maya would have dinner ready when he got home from early shifts, or if he worked late, she'd save him a plate in the fridge with reheating instructions. They'd watch shows, together in the evening, or sometimes just sit in comfortable silence while she edited photos on her laptop and he caught up on medical journals. It was domestic in a way that should have felt strange but didn't. I think I'm going to have to accept that finding an affordable place in this city is basically impossible, Maya said one evening. They were sitting on the couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn while watching an old movie. Every apartment in my budget is either the size of a closet or in a neighborhood that's an hour commute from everything. You're not bothering anyone here, David said. Jake doesn't care, and I. He paused, trying to find the right words. I don't mind having you around. Maya looked at him, something soft in her expression. You're sure? It's been almost a month. That's way longer than I said I'd stay. I'm sure. The truth was, David had started to look forward to coming home. The apartment felt alive now. There was always music playing softly, always something cooking, always someone to talk to. Maya made the space feel less like just a place he slept between shifts and more like an actual home. But the easy comfort they'd built was about to be tested. It happened on a Tuesday night. David was working a late shift, not due home until after midnight. Maya had texted him earlier saying she'd leave dinner in the fridge for him and probably be asleep by the time he got back. But when David walked in at 12:30, he found Maya sitting on the couch in the dark, her phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. Hey, what's wrong? David dropped his bag and crossed the room immediately, sitting beside her. Maya quickly wiped at her eyes. It's nothing. I'm fine. You're clearly not fine. She let out a shaky breath. My ex won't stop calling. Tyler. He's been messaging me all day, demanding I come get my stuff from his place. Says if I don't pick it up by this weekend, he's throwing it all out. David felt a flash of anger. Can't he just pack it up and meet you somewhere public? That would be too reasonable for Tyler. Maya's voice was bitter. He wants me to come to the apartment, our old apartment. I think he's hoping if I show up, he can talk me into coming back. Are you going to go? I have to. There's stuff there I need. Important stuff. Photos of my mom, some of my camera equipment, my documents. She looked miserable. I've been putting it off because I knew it would be like this. Tyler's really good at making everything difficult. Then I'll go with you. Maya looked up, surprised. What? I'll go with you, David repeated. You shouldn't have to face him alone, especially if you think he's going to try to manipulate you into going back. David, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. Something shifted in Maya's expression. Gratitude mixed with something else, something deeper. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. They arranged to go Saturday afternoon. Maya had texted Tyler to let him know she'd be coming by at 2 and that she'd have someone with her. Tyler's response had been predictably hostile, but he'd agreed to be there. The next few days felt tense. Maya was quieter than usual, clearly anxious about the upcoming confrontation. David tried to keep things light, but he was worried too. He'd dealt with enough toxic relationships through his work to know they rarely ended cleanly. Saturday came too quickly. Maya was ready by 1:30, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. "You sure about this?" David asked as they headed to his car. "No, but let's go anyway." The drive across town was quiet. Maya navigated while David drove, her leg bouncing nervously. When they pulled up outside a generic apartment complex in a questionable neighborhood, David understood a bit more about why Maya had been so desperate to leave. Tyler was waiting outside, leaning against the building with his arms crossed. He was tall, muscular, with the kind of aggressive posture that immediately put David on edge. This was someone who was used to intimidating people. "Really, Maya? You brought backup?" Tyler's voice dripped with contempt as they approached. "I brought a friend to help me carry boxes," Maya said evenly. "Can we just get this done, please?" Tyler's eyes swept over David, assessing him. "Yeah, sure. Whatever. Your stuff's all packed up inside. You've got an hour, then I'm changing the locks." The apartment was small and dark, with clothes scattered everywhere and dishes piled in the sink. David could immediately tell this wasn't a place Maya would have chosen for herself. It felt oppressive, suffocating. Her boxes were stacked in the bedroom, 5 or 6 of them poorly taped shut. Tyler hovered in the doorway while they worked, making snide comments. "Taking all your stuff back to your new boyfriend's place?" "He's not my boyfriend. He's my roommate." "Right, sure he is." David kept his mouth shut and focused on carrying boxes. He could feel Tyler trying to provoke a reaction, but he wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. But when Maya bent down to pick up a box and Tyler made a crude comment about her appearance, David had to bite his tongue hard. He met Maya's eyes and saw her shake her head slightly. "Don't engage. Not worth it." It took 45 minutes to load everything into David's car. Tyler watched from the doorway the entire time, his presence like a dark cloud hanging over everything. As they loaded the last box, Tyler called out, "You're making a mistake, Maya. You're going to regret this." Maya turned to face him and David saw her straighten her spine, saw something fierce flash in her eyes. "The only thing I regret is staying as long as I did." Then she got in the car and didn't look back. They drove, in silence for about 10 minutes before Maya finally spoke. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "Don't apologize, I'm glad I was there. He wasn't always like that, you know. Or maybe he was and I just couldn't see it at first. He was charming when we met, attentive. It was only after I moved in that things started to change. Little comments here and there, jealousy disguised as caring. By the time I realized how bad it had gotten, I felt trapped." David reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. "You're not trapped anymore." Maya squeezed back. "No, I'm not." When they got back to the apartment, they spent the rest of the afternoon unloading boxes. Maya stacked them neatly in the corner of the living room, promising to organize everything properly later. But David could see the relief on her face, the way her shoulders had relaxed now that this ordeal was behind her. That night, they ordered pizza and watched mindless comedies until late. Maya fell asleep halfway through the second movie, her head resting on David's shoulder. He stayed perfectly still, not wanting to wake her even when his arm started to go numb. Looking down at her peaceful face, David realized something he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. This wasn't just about being kind to Jake's sister anymore. This wasn't just about helping someone going through a rough patch. He was falling for her. Maybe he'd been falling since that first night when he found her sitting on his bed looking completely at home. Maybe it had been gradual, building through weeks of shared meals and late-night conversations. But somewhere along the way, Maya had become essential to his life, and he had no idea what to do about it. Around midnight, Maya stirred and blinked awake. "Sorry," she mumbled, sitting up. "Didn't mean to fall asleep on you." "It's fine," David said, even though his shoulder was definitely asleep now. Maya looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable in the dim light from the TV. "Thank you. For today. For everything, really. You didn't have to be so kind to me, but you were anyway. Maya, I mean it. You made me feel safe today. You've been making me feel safe since I got here. That's not something I've felt in a long time." The air between them felt charged suddenly, heavy with words neither of them was saying. David's heart was pounding so loud he was sure she must hear it. But before either of them could say anything more, Maya stood up. I should get some sleep. Early photo shoot tomorrow. Right. Yeah. Good night. Good night, David. She headed toward the living room where her makeshift bed on the couch waited. David sat there for a while longer, his mind racing, his heart full of things he couldn't say. Not yet, maybe not ever. The week after they retrieved Maya's things from Tyler's apartment felt different somehow. There was a new awareness between David and Maya, like they'd crossed some invisible line but neither wanted to acknowledge it directly. Jake came home on Wednesday for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. He took one look at the apartment, at the way Maya and David moved around each other with easy familiarity, and grinned knowingly. So this is cozy, he said, dropping his bag by the door. What's that supposed to mean? David asked, though he could feel his ears getting warm. Nothing, man. Just an observation. Jake grabbed a soda from the fridge. Lisa and I are thinking about getting a place together. Her lease is up next month. That's great, Maya said, bringing her laptop to the kitchen table. You two seem happy. We are. Which is why I wanted to ask. Jake looked between David and Maya. Would you guys be cool if I moved out? I know technically this is my apartment too, but Lisa's place is bigger and closer to her work, and honestly I'm barely here anyway. David and Maya exchanged a glance. I'd need to find another roommate, David said slowly, to cover your half of rent. Well, Jake's grin widened. Maya needs a place. Maya's already here. Seems like a pretty obvious solution to me. Maya's eyes went wide. Jake, that's not... David might not want... Actually, David heard himself say, that could work. If you want to stay, Really? Maya looked surprised but hopeful. Really? You're already here, like Jake said. And... David tried to keep his voice casual even though his heart was racing. You're a good roommate. Better than Jake, honestly. Hey, Jake protested, but he was still grinning. Fair enough. So it's settled then? I'll be out by the end of the month? They spent the next hour discussing logistics. Jake would take most of his furniture to Lisa's place since she was moving to an unfurnished apartment. Maya would officially take over his room. The rent would be split 50-50 between David and Maya. It all made perfect practical sense. But underneath the practical conversations, David could feel the weight of what this meant. Maya wasn't temporary anymore. She was going to be a permanent part of his life, living in the apartment, sharing the space with him in a more official capacity. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. That Saturday, they helped Jake pack up his room and load everything into a borrowed truck. Maya claimed the now empty room, and David helped her move her boxes from the living room. It took most of the day to get her settled, but by evening she had her own space set up with her photography equipment, her mom's photos on the desk, and her clothes finally out of suitcases. It's weird, Maya said, standing in the doorway of her new room. I haven't had my own space in so long. Tyler always wanted to share everything. Closet space, desk space, everything. He said it was romantic, but it always felt more like he was trying to erase my boundaries. Well, this is yours, David said. Lock on the door and everything. Your private space. Maya smiled. Thank you for all of this. Stop thanking me. We're roommates now. Official roommates. You're paying rent and everything. Still, I know this whole situation has been unconventional. Unconventional is one word for it. David leaned against the doorframe. But I don't mind. Honestly, I think this is going to work out fine. And it did work out fine. For about 3 days. Then things got complicated. It started innocently enough. Monday evening, David came home from work to find Maya cooking dinner as usual. But something was different. She was humming that jazz song again. The one she always hummed when she was in a good mood, and she was wearing a dress he hadn't seen before. It was simple, nothing fancy, but it looked nice on her. Special occasion? He asked, setting his bag down. Oh no. Just felt like putting in a bit of effort today. She glanced over her shoulder at him and smiled. How was work? Long, busy, the usual. David got a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching her cook. It was something he'd done dozens of times before, but tonight it felt different. Tonight he let himself really look at her, really acknowledge what he'd been trying to ignore. She was beautiful. Not in an obvious way, but in those small moments when she laughed at something on TV, or when she concentrated on editing photos with that little crease between her eyebrows, Or right now, cooking dinner while humming off-key. "David, you okay?" He realized he'd been staring. "Yeah, sorry, just tired." But Maya was studying him now, and there was something in her expression that made his breath catch. Like maybe she was seeing him differently too. "Dinner's ready," she said softly. They ate at the kitchen table like always. But the conversation felt stilted, awkward in a way it hadn't been in weeks. Both of them seemed hyper-aware of each other, careful not to let their hands brush when reaching for the salt, maintaining a respectful distance. After dinner, they migrated to the living room to watch their usual shows. But when Maya sat on the couch, she left more space between them than normal. David noticed and tried not to feel disappointed. This continued for the rest of the week. They were still friendly, still kind to each other, but there was a tension now that hadn't existed before, an awareness of what they weren't saying, of the feelings they were both carefully not acknowledging. Jake noticed, of course. He'd stopped by Thursday evening to grab some stuff he'd forgotten, and he pulled David aside while Maya was in her room. "So when are you going to tell her?" Jake asked bluntly. "Tell her what?" "Oh, come on, man. You're in love with my sister. It's so obvious it hurts to watch." David felt his face flush. "I don't—" "It's not like that. David, buddy, I've known you for 3 years. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at her, and she looks at you the same way, in case you haven't noticed. Even if that were true, which I'm not saying it is, Maya just got out of a bad relationship. The last thing she needs is me making things complicated." "Maybe that's her decision to make, not yours," Jake said. "But hey, what do I know? I'm just her brother who's watched her slowly come back to life over the past month and a half thanks to you." That conversation stayed with David for the next few days. He found himself watching Maya more, trying to see what Jake claimed to see. And maybe there was something there. The way her smile got a bit softer when she looked at him. The way she'd found excuses to touch his arm or shoulder in passing. The way she seemed to light up when he came home from work. Or maybe he was just seeing what he wanted to see. Friday night, David decided he needed to get out of his own head. He came home from work, showered, and was planning to go meet some friends at a bar downtown. Anything to get some distance and perspective. But when he came out of his room dressed to go out, Maya looked up from her laptop with surprise. "Going somewhere?" "Meeting some friends for drinks. Thought I'd get out of the apartment for a bit." "Oh, that sounds fun." Maya's smile seemed forced. "Have a good time." David almost left. He had his keys in his hand, his wallet in his pocket. But something made him pause at the door. "Want to come with?" Maya looked surprised. "Really?" "Yeah, I mean, you've been cooped up in the apartment a lot. When's the last time you went out and had fun?" She considered this. "Honestly? I can't remember. But your friends don't want a random girl tagging along. You're not random. You're my roommate. And my friend. Come on, it'll be fun." 20 minutes later, they were walking into a bar in downtown. David's friends greeted them warmly. And if they were surprised to see him with a woman, they didn't show it. The evening passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. Maya fit in easily with the group, telling funny stories about photography disasters and charming everyone with her quick wit. David found himself watching her across the table, seeing her come alive in a social setting. She was radiant when she laughed, her whole face lighting up, and every so often she'd catch his eye and smile like they were sharing a private joke. Around 11, they decided to head home. The walk back to the apartment was pleasant, the night air cool and refreshing after the warmth of the crowded bar. "Thank you for inviting me," Maya said as they walked. "I had a really good time. Your friends are..."